Hey everyone, my name is Charlie, and today we are ignoring dust, we are ignoring mess, and I am going to try something different to curate a top 10 of the books that I have read in 2022. Last year, I created this really huge video that went on for a very long time, where I picked the titles of every single book that I'd read in 2021 out of a Quality Street tub and pitted the books against each other. It went on for too long and it didn't work. However, we're trying something different this time. Throughout this year, I have created top 10s of each quarter, similar to what Dane does over on his channel. So that has given me a top 40 for the year. And I have put that top 40 into the Wheel of Names generator online. And I am going to pick 2 books a time until we've gone through all 40. That should give us 20. We'll go through all of them again, and that should give us our final top 10 of the year. Is this going to work? I don't know. I just want to see how this matches up against my official top 10, which you should be able to see on my Instagram page at some point if I ever remember to take the photograph. I just want to try this. If it bores you, I don't care. It's a bit of fun for me. So we're going to try it. We're going to be pitting my top 40 books against one another, and you'll get to learn about them as we go through. I'm aware that I didn't post my top 10 books for the third quarter of the year or my top 10 books for the fourth quarter of the year, and quite honestly, the final quarter of the year, I was struggling to pull 10 books out of all of the books that I read. The final quarter of this year has not been the best when it comes to good books that I've read this year, but the first quarter of the year was fantastic. And I think that this is going to intrigue me. So, without further ado, the first book entering into this competition is Square Haunting by Francesca W.E.B. This is a book that I read back in January and has actually lingered on my mind for the entire year. Not gonna lie, this might be one of the books that was on my official top 10. This is a book about 5 women, freedom, and London between the wars. They all lived on this same square, and it's really just this glorious piece of non-fiction that reads like a narrative. I adore it. And that book is being pitted against Cold Enough for Snow by Jessica O. I don't actually own a physical copy of this because I got the NetGalley edition, and this was a very short book that I could never tell whether one of the protagonists was a ghost or not, but it dealt very much with the breaking down of relationship between a mother and a daughter, and was a very short, insightful novel. Unfortunately, it hasn't beat out Square Haunting, so the first book being removed from this list is Cold Enough for Snow by Jessica O. Next we have Treacle Walker by Alan Garner going up against Fairyland by Alicia Abbott. Once again, Fairyland is right here. This is a fantastic piece of memoir about, from the perspective of Alicia Abbott, whose father was a gay man in San Francisco and her mother died when she was rather young, and it discusses 1970s San Francisco. And I adore Treacle Walker though. That's the thing. A lot of people didn't like Treacle Walker. It was long listed and then shortlisted for the Booker Prize, and everybody thought that Treacle Walker was going to win because they had this whole conspiracy that Alan Garner would win due to the fact that his birthday fell on the date that they were announcing the winner. And that annoyed me. And some people said that it was like it was just they were thinking about giving it to him simply because of how much work Alan Garner had done in the past and how much they enjoyed it. And I think adults ask too many questions when it comes to literature and when it comes to fiction, because to me, Treacle Walker was this fantastic 1950s style adventure, and it was all about entering into the imagination of a child, where all these different things can play with each other, you know, like playing Power Rangers and suddenly the X-Men arrive, if we were looking at my childhood. And that's the sort of thing I got from Treacle Walker. It was just this fantastic adventure story. But Fairyland does win this one because this is a fantastic piece of memoir that discusses relationships between, again, a child and their parent, but also discusses everything going on in the world at the time, especially within the gay culture. And yeah, so Goodbye to Treacle Walker coming in at number 39. That is unexpected. Then we have Wind Volume 2 by James Tynion IV and Michael D. Ellinas going up against All About Evie by Matson Taylor. Wind Volume 2 is a fantastic sequel to Wind, and magic is almost allegorical to homosexuality in these books, despite the fact that our main protagonist is gay. All About Evie is the sequel to The Miseducation of Evie Epworth and has one scene that, when I think about it, it still brings a smile to my face. It's in the first chapter. It's fantastic. It's such a comedic, brilliant, humorous book, and definitely beats out Wind Volume 2. Then we have, I wish this thing went a bit faster. If I was picking them out of a box, it'd be quicker. And some of these books aren't going to appear because they're on other shelves. So then we have The Seven Moons of Marley Almeida by Shihan Karunatilaka against, it's scaring me now, because the thing is, these are all favourite books going against favourite books, so it's ranking my favourites, and I'm concerned that things that were in my top 10 are going to come up against each other. This one, Sky Day by Leone Ross. This is actually a very easy decision for me to make, as much as I like this one, Sky Day, and I really appreciated the magic and the tale and the community within this book, and it's one that I would reread. The Seven Moons of Marley Almeida just have everything that I like to see in fiction in one book. It was humorous, it was grotesque, it was discussing death, it was featuring another part of the world that I didn't know about. It is this brilliant novel, which also I found myself likening to A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens due to everything that goes on in there. So, yep, The Seven Moons of Marley Almeida makes it to the next round. Next, we have Reckless Paper Birds by John McCullough going up against Tomb of Sand by Gitanjali Shree, translated by Daisy Rockwell. Reckless Paper Birds is a fantastic poetry collection and you ought to go and read it, but Tomb of Sand is superb, sublime. I read this as part of a read-along hosted by Sarah of Hardcover Hearts, and I'm so glad that we read this as a group so that all of these people could give us more knowledge about what was going on within the text. Brilliant reading experience, so much going on within the language, unctuous prose, something to return to in future. It had to win this time. Next, we have The Haunting Season, which is by various authors, going up against... You're getting to the fourth quarter of the year now with that one. Oh, this is unexpected. At Mrs. Lippincote's by Elizabeth Taylor. And At Mrs. Lippincote's wins this time round. It's not to say that I didn't like The Haunting Season. I think it's a fantastic short story collection, fantastically ghostly and brilliant for this time of year. But At Mrs. Lippincote's is at the beginning of Elizabeth Taylor's career, and yet still manages to be written in such a brilliant way. I don't know how to describe Elizabeth Taylor's prose, but I always end up enjoying what I'm reading. We've got 28 to get through, so, and we've been at this for 12 minutes, so let's try and get a shift on. Next, we have Mensana in Thingamy Doodah by Victoria Wood going up against Bonsai by Alejandra Zambra, translated by Megan McDowell. As much as I adore Victoria Wood, Bonsai takes the cake here. Bonsai wins this round because it is a very short book, under 80 pages. You will have heard me talk about it only the other day, and it is short, insightful, and one to constantly go back, reread and pick over, and which you can do with Victoria Wood's work as well, but Bonsai just edged it in there. Babel by R.F. Kuang is going up against The Book of Form and Emptiness by Ruth Ozeki, and The Book of Form and Emptiness wins. That's all I have to say. Babel is fantastic for the first few hundred pages, but if you've read R.F. Kuang before and you know how the Poppy War series ends, then the author does kind of take us on a familiar journey when it comes to these characters, and there's part of me that just wishes that she'd think of different endings because, and spoilers here really, whenever the author seems to have written themselves into a hole or doesn't know what to do with a character, she just removes the character from a page, and this can be swathes of characters just killed off simply because you can tell that the author is finding it a bit unwieldy. And I think that in time she might figure things out a bit easier than just killing off all your characters. But yeah. Meanwhile, the Book of Form and Emptiness is simply brilliant. Hugely fantastic book, once again dealing with families and grief, and I'm always interested in reading how different explorations of grief in fiction, due to the fact that I've experienced quite a lot of grief in my life, and I find that I almost navigate towards these books about death and grief, and I think that this book just did it fantastically. Then we have Loop by Brenda Lozano, translated by Annie McDermott, going up against Things We Do Not Tell the People We Love by Huma Qureshi. Things We Do Not Tell the People That We Love by Huma Qureshi is going through into the next round and the final round. This is another superb short story collection that deals with familial relationships. And maybe that's the thing about this year's reading, is that I've read a lot to do with familial relationships, and that's also something that I like to read about. But this wins this round. Next we have Their But Father by Ellie Smith going up against Maps of Our Spectacular Bodies by Maddie Mortimer. So Maps of Our Spectacular Bodies wins this round simply because Their But Father was only on here because I didn't read a lot of good books in the final quarter of the year. Their But Father isn't a bad book. If you like Ellie Smith, then you'll like this book. Indeed, whilst I was reading it, I was seeing many links to the seasonal quartet in the way that the author writes and the tropes, the characters that she brings into it, but it did feel very samey. And when it comes to Ellie Smith, sometimes I feel like maybe she could do with another edit. Everything's very in your face, and sometimes I'd appreciate maybe a little bit more nuance, but maybe that's asking for too much. She seems to include everything on the page, and I think there's some stuff that doesn't need to be included. Sometimes you can just allow your reader to figure these things out for themselves rather than constantly spoon feeding them. Okay, we've only got 20 entries left now. We're halfway there, hopefully. We have The Five Wounds by Kirsten Valdez-Quaid going up against Limbic by Peter Scalpalo. Once again, fantastic poetry collection, and I'm sorry that the poetry collection seemed to have gone out in the first round here. It's just who they've ended up against. It's the computer's fault, not mine. Limbic, brilliant poetry collection. Read it. But The Five Wounds was one of the books that I read for the BookTube prize, and could have been the top of the round that I was reading if The Magician hadn't been there. And yes, I'm still upset about the fact that The Magician didn't make it further in the BookTube prize, and sometimes I do question my fellow judges. Indeed, that's one of the reasons I didn't make a final video, because I would have just been too upset about stuff. Next, we have King Kong Theory by Virginie Despentes, translated by Frank Wynne, going up against Family Parsonage by Anthony Trollope. There are a few Anthony Trollope novels in this list this year, and Family Parsonage is going through to the next round. As much as I appreciated what was being said in King Kong Theory, and it did leave me with a lot of questions. And, well, it didn't leave me with a lot of questions. It inspired me to have conversations with myself and with the book. Family Parsonage is... Ooh, it's Anthony Trollope. And I'm really enjoying the Barsetshire series. I didn't finish the series this year. But the last fiction book that I read new this year was The Small House at Allington. And Family Parsonage has a great female protagonist. And I really appreciated reading her on the page. I flew through this book rather quickly because of how much I was enjoying reading the character of Lucy Roberts and wanting to see where everything would go. So, next, we have The Small House at Allington by Anthony Trollope going up against... If it goes up against another Anthony Trollope, I'll laugh. Build Your House Around My Body by Violet Kupersmith. The Small House at Allington is good. I think I'm one of the few people who didn't like it as much as I liked Family Parsonage. Build Your House Around My Body had a lot in that I like. I don't own that book, but I want to own that book. Folklore, mystery, superstition. If I was to hold this up against this one Sky Day as I used to do earlier in the year, then it would have beaten that one. Build Your House Around My Body's going through to the next round anyway. We lost one Anthony Trollope. Let's not lose another one. We have A Tidy Ending by Joanna Cannon going up against. Now this could be a difficult one because Joanna Cannon is a favourite author of mine. Oh my. The Love Songs of W.E.B. Dubois by Honoree Fannone Jeffers. Oh. As this is my top 10, it's not your top 10, I feel like the people watching this want Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois to go through. And I liked A Tidy Ending. A Tidy Ending, Joanna Cannon's prose is just like everything that I like in fiction. And Love Songs, I felt like, had many different stories. Sometimes it retold the same story within its pages. But it was also a huge narrative for very specific reasons, and I found myself reminded of David Copperfield with it, simply because I did see the author make this allusion to the fact that all these old white men had written huge books, so why couldn't she, as a black woman, write this huge tome that discusses a huge familial narrative, going in and out of the generations and discussing generational, not torture, but the way in which the torment of a previous generation can actually impact the later generations further down the line. Intergenerational trauma, is that the term I'm looking for? A Tidy Ending, though. I was going, when I saw this, I was like, Joanna Cannon's going through. This one is a difficult one for me. I'm looking at the two books, that's why I'm not looking at you. I mean, I never look at you, do I? Well, do you know what? I think it's, oh. I think it has to be the Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois. I do, as much as I adore A Tidy Ending by Joanna Cannon. Someone came upstairs to use the lavatory, so I span the final few spins whilst you weren't here. And we've had our first case of two books that I'd originally put in my predicted top 10 for the year against each other. But let's just go through them. Next, we had The Books of Jacob by Olga Tokarczuk, translated by Jennifer Croft, going up against The Fell by Sarah Moss. The Books of Jacob is going through to the next round. This huge tome I did a vlog of. And The Fell by Sarah Moss is currently in a bag waiting to go to the charity shop. So originally, when I reviewed that, I said that it'd be interesting to look back in a few years and reread it. And the more I thought about it, I was just like, yeah, but if I want to do that, I'll get it out of the library and think about that then. Then we have The Lincoln Highway by Amor Towles versus The Cost of Living by Deborah Levy. And as much as I adore Deborah Levy's trilogy, indeed, I actually sent a message to the publisher to thank them for sending me the e-galley, and they sent me the 3 copies due to that. The Lincoln Highway is one of my favourite books of the year. It still lingers in my mind as a favourite. I loved the whole experience of reading that, and it's made me want to go and read more by this author. Then we have our final trollop in our top 40, which is The Way We Live Now, and that is going up against The Paper Palace by Miranda Cowley-Heller, which I feel like I liked more than a lot of other people did. I shared it with someone at work, and her reaction to it was completely different to mine, and both of us had interpreted the ending in different fashions, and I found that really interesting. But The Way We Live Now is going through to the next and final round. Then, this is where two books that I'd put in my top 10 have been pitted against each other. And we have The Magician by Toibin against My Name is Lucy Barton by Elizabeth Strout. Elizabeth Strout is an author whose work I have come to adore. I love her writing. There's always something hidden beneath the surface. I love the almost metafictional aspect of these novels as well, where anything is possible is this collection of short stories about the people in Amgash, looking back on My Name is Lucy Barton as though that book was actually a biography. Yet The Magician is such a quietly told book, but such a well done book that I read slowly because I just loved this languid pace of it, and it really suited my sensibilities. So as hard as this is, The Magician is going through to the next round. Then we had it's not here. Then we had Fabulosa by Paul Baker, and that went up against Elena Knows by Claudia Pinheiro, translated by Francis Riddle. Both brilliant books. Elena Knows talks about disability. People I think over-egg the mystery element of this book. I really don't think that it's a mystery novel. I feel like it's more a mother struggling with the grief of her child and going over all of the things that she did wrong. Whereas Fabulosa is this brilliant book about Polari and the way that came into use. And I've talked much more about the conversations that this book has allowed me to have with people. So Fabulosa by Paul Baker is going through to our second and final round. Then we have Wind Volume 1 by James Tynion IV and Michael Dialinas going up against The Appeal by Janice Hallett, and Wind Volume 1 is going through to our second and final round because whilst The Appeal is a great piece of modern epistolary fiction, it's also a one and done type book. And I did guess who the killer was, I did guess who the victim was, and it was a very solvable book to me. So, we now have our top 20, and we are going to work together to turn this into a top 10 and see how it matches up against my own top 10. Okay, so we're moving into our second and final round here. We now have a top 20, and we're going to divide this into our top 10. This is clearly going to be more difficult, I think, because we've already seen one of my original top 10 drop out. And I was going to write all of the names down and do this again, but we've just been hit by another snag in that two of my original top 10s have actually just been pitted against each other again, and they are The Way We Live Now by Anthony Trollope and The Lincoln Highway by Amor Towles. And this is another difficult decision for me. The Way We Live Now, I think, is all of Anthony Trollope's regular themes coming to the fore. But honestly, I do think, yeah, The Lincoln Highway is going to take this one. Yeah, so maybe it was easier than I thought. Maybe I'll write all of them down and get back to you. Let's see. Not writing them down. The Lincoln Highway is now the first book in our top 10, and tried this again, and another two of my original top 10 have ended up against each other. That's Square Haunting by Francesca Wade and All About Evie by Matson Taylor. Really? Tell you, the universe is out to get me with this. So we're going to have a completely different top 10 to the one we wrote, because, oh my goodness, how do you go about this? This is difficult, but oh, is it really? It's going to be Square Haunting by Francesca Wade, as much as I adore All About Evie. You're going to get to see the official top 10 at some point anyway, so it's fine. It's fine. Pitting my top 40 against each other. I did this to myself. We have The Book of Form and Emptiness by Ruth Ozeki. This is just upsetting me now. And this is going against Fairyland by Alicia Abbott. Okay, The Book of Form and Emptiness is going through here. Yeah, there we go. Easy decision to make with that one. We've got to make some snap decisions here to get our top 10. We've been here for a while. Let's get this done. It keeps giving me original top 10 books. So we have Fabulosa by Paul Baker going up against... I'm scared of this wheel now. It's terrifying to me. It was all right in the first round. Wind Volume 1 by James Tynion IV and Michael de Alinas. So Fabulosa by Paul Baker's going through. If we're going, both books are discussing gay history in their own ways. Wind in this fantasy allegorical fashion, Paul Baker from a linguistic point of view, and it's the linguistic point of view that's going to go through this time. Next we have The Books of Jacob by Olga Tokarczuk, translated by Jennifer Croft, against... Oh, okay, that's actually a bit easier. Mrs. Lippincote's by Elizabeth Taylor. Yeah, so The Books of Jacob is going through here. I adore Elizabeth Taylor. I adore all of these books. But The Books of Jacob is this dense, this very dense book that when you finished it as a reader, there's this sense of completion, but also this sense of being able to tackle anything. Also weirdly metaphysical at points, surreal, humorous, but disgusting in equal measure. And then we have The Seven Moons of Marley Almeida against Build Your House Around My Body by Violet Kupersmith. Seven Moons makes it. Just rushing through them now. So then we have The Love Songs of W.E.B. Dubois against... Tomb of Sand by Gitanjali Shri, translated by Daisy Rockwell. And Tomb of Sand is going through this time. I hope everyone's keeping track of this. I hope it's getting you like the RuPaul finale gets all of us. Family Parsonage by Anthony Trollope versus... Now we've got some good books here it could be going up against. We could be losing all of the Trollopes this time round, which will be weird because, oh, wait, we're not losing a Trollope. There is a Trollope in our top 10 this year. Not in our official top 10, but in this top 10, because it's going up against Bonsai by Alejandro Zambra, translated by Megan McDowell. And Family Parsonage took this one, if you didn't know. Now, we could end up with a rematch here. It could be a rematch of the BookTube prize about to happen with The Five Wounds and another book on here, because The Five Wounds is our next book, and that is going up against... Now, this is difficult because I really, really liked 3 of these 4 books. No, it did happen. It happened. It's The Magician versus The Five Wounds by Kirsten Valder-Quays. So this decision was made for us months ago when I ranked these books, with The Magician just eking in above, sneaking in above The Five Wounds, because I could tell that The Five Wounds was the first novel. As accomplished a short story writer as Kirsten Valdez-Quaid is, she does include a lot that might be a bit unnecessary in this book. However, it's a fantastic familial narrative that I wholeheartedly recommend. The Magician made it through, which means we have Things We Do Not Tell Those We Love by Huma Qureshi against Maps of Our Spectacular Bodies by Maddie Mortimer. And Things We Do Not Tell Those We Love by Huma Qureshi is the final book making its way onto our top 10. Which means that my unofficial top 10 for this year goes The Lincoln Highway by Amor Towles, Square Haunting by Francesca Wade, The Book of Form and Emptiness by Ruth Ozeki, Fabulosa by Paul Baker, The Books of Jacob by Olga Tokarczuk, translated by Jennifer Croft, The Seven Moons of Marley Almeida by Shihan Karunatilaka, Tomb of Sand by Gitanjali Shri, translated by Daisy Rockwell, Family Parsonage by Anthony Trollope, The Magician by Colm Toibin, and Things We Do Not Tell Those We Love by Huma Qureshi. Immediately, we lost My Name is Lucy Barton, and we lost All About Evie by Matson Taylor. And books that are on here in their place are Family Parsonage and The Books of Jacob. Otherwise, it's pretty much exactly what I wrote down. So I had My Name is Lucy Barton, Square Haunting, Things We Do Not Tell Those We Love, All About Evie, Tomb of Sand, The Seven Moons of Marley Almeida, The Magician, The Book of Form and Emptiness, The Lincoln Highway, and Fabulosa. So, really, it matched up. Except the universe decided that we needed 2 books on here that weren't. And maybe the universe is correct. I don't know. Let's find these books and show them off. I mean, that's our top 10. This is our... Well, I was going to call it an unofficial top 10, but to me it actually looks like a pretty good top 10. We took out 2 books that we didn't expect to be on here. Well, we expected to be on here. But I think that, really, every single one of these books has stuck with me in some fashion. Yeah, maybe these are the best books that I read in 2022. Maybe we need to discuss why. But I think that we've done that. Do you need to hear my thoughts any further on these books? I don't know that you do. I think that we have a fantastically varied list of books, and that to whittle down a top 40 to a top 10 has certainly been an experience. I'm actually pretty glad of this selection. I think it's meant that I've had to look at books more based on their craft and how they've lingered with me. Yes, I still wish that Elizabeth Strout and Matson Taylor were here, but I think that those books that have replaced them definitely belong. So that's that. If you've read any of the books that made it onto my top 40 and would like to discuss them, then please feel free to do so in the comments. What do you think about this top 10? Let me know. I hope that you have enjoyed this video. And until next time, that is all. You know, best wishes for 2023 and all that. My challenge to you for 2023 is to read one of the books that was on my top 10. And if you've already read all of them, read one from the top 40. Indeed, read Fabulosa by Paul Baker. Actually, yeah. No, read this entire top 10. That's my challenge to you. In fact, let's make it a top 12. So you've got 1 book to read every single month of 2023. Come to me at the end of 2023 once you've read these and All About Evie by Matson Taylor and My Name is Lucy Barton by Elizabeth Strout. Come to me then. Tell me how you got on. That's your reading list for 2023 sorted. I'm off. Tokarczuk. Had a great time with you. I really enjoyed 2022. Not read as much as I wanted to, but when do we ever do what we wanted to? You never do when you work in retail. Abyssinia.